We begin with China tonight, where the army is losing its top generals not at the hands of an enemy but thanks to their own president. In the last 2 years, he's fired some 30 top officials in the Chinese military, including 2 defense ministers, maybe a third one too. Why is Xi Jinping doing this? And what does this purge mean for the PLA? We'll bring you the full story. In Pakistan, will Imran Khan be finally released from jail? We ask because Donald Trump's team is pushing for it and the Pakistani government is engaging with Imran Khan's party. In the east, the Philippines wants to buy America's Typhoon missiles. We'll tell you why China is having a meltdown over it. In Syria, unrest in multiple cities. Can the new regime in Damascus protect the country's minorities? Despite Dhaka's hostility, India sends shipments of rice to Bangladesh as they struggle with rising prices. Donald Trump continues to mock Justin Trudeau. Even in his Christmas message, we decode the rift between the two leaders. Also, why Elon Musk now wants a town of his own in Texas. Why Mozambique remains in turmoil, now with a major prison break. What is the Annapurna certificate that's been called India's answer to the Michelin stars? And how do you choose a New Year's resolution that you won't fail? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Israeli airstrikes hit several targets in Houthi-held areas of Yemen. The Sana'a airport, a military base and a power station all come under attack. The Houthis slam Israeli aggression. The strikes come a day after Yemen fired a ballistic missile and 2 drones at Israel. Israeli Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir visits the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem, triggering angry reactions from the Palestinian Authority and Jordan. Israel has had a long-standing ban on Jewish prayers at this site, but Ben-Gvir has repeatedly defied it. The Al-Aqsa compound has been a focal point of tension between Israel and Palestine. What caused the Azerbaijan Airlines plane to crash? A Ukrainian official claims the aircraft was shot down by a Russian air defense system, but Moscow and Kazakhstan play down the speculation. The Kremlin says, wait for the investigation to end. 38 people were killed in the plane crash on Christmas. China to build the world's largest hydropower dam in Tibet. The dam on the Brahmaputra River will be close to the Indian border. This has raised concerns in India and Bangladesh. The project could alter not only the local ecology but also the flow of the river downstream. An undersea power cable linking Finland and Estonia breaks down. It's the latest incident involving telecom cables and energy pipelines in the Baltic Sea. Last month, 2 cables linking Sweden and Denmark were damaged. Tensions have mounted around the Baltic Sea since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And South Korea's opposition moves to impeach its acting president. This comes amid a row over the composition of the Constitutional Court. The court will decide if suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol should be removed from office. South Korea has been in political turmoil since Yoon declared martial law on the 3rd of December. "2024 is winding down. For most of us, a new year means a fresh start. But Xi Jinping is not most of us. He believes in business as usual. For China's military, that translates into more turmoil and more of the president's vengeful cleanup drive. It began in 2023 with a massive shake-up. 2 defense ministers disappeared in quick succession. 9 generals were purged shortly after. It's been 2 years and the purge is only picking pace. Top military officers are being given the boot in China. On First Post, we track China very closely, but even for us, it's getting harder to keep up. In the last 2 days, at least 3 top officials have been sacked. 2 of them were fired today. Their names are Haitao and Li Pengcheng. Both served as generals in the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, or the Chinese Army. These generals also held key roles in China's parliament. Their job was to shape military laws. But one fine day, their membership was revoked and they were fired. Reason? The same old one that China gives: violation of party law and discipline. That's basically code for corruption. That's what they're accused of, corruption. But China hesitates to use the word corruption, especially when senior officials are involved. So they say vague things like violation of party law and discipline. That's the pretext for axing the top brass. And sometimes they don't even bother with that. They don't even bother giving a reason why someone has been fired. They just fire people. In fact, it happened 2 days back. A general was dropped from a key post in the PLA, named General Qin Shutong. Role: political commissar for the PLA's ground forces. Now, this is a very important post for the Communist Party. A political commissar's job is to instill party loyalty in the army, to keep the PLA loyal to the Communist Party of China. That is the job. But the man in charge of it has been fired himself, most likely for violation of party law. Although Beijing has not given an official reason yet, a new general will replace him, and this transition has raised eyebrows. Usually, such announcements are followed by a ceremony. When the new political commissar formally takes over, the outgoing general attends the event. That is the norm. It did not happen this time, though. General Qin was missing. And this has triggered speculation. And it gets murkier because there is no word on General Qin's next posting. He could be in trouble because his case fits a pattern where officials are axed and made to disappear. In the last 2 years, at least 30 such cases have been reported in China, and we are talking about top officials here. Also, these are the cases that we know about. There could be many more. These men are put through secret trials conducted by Beijing, and we have some very high-profile examples. Li Shangfu and Wei Fengyi both served as China's defense ministers. In 2023, they were removed on corruption charges, one after the other, and then expelled from the Communist Party. They vanished from the public eye. What happened to these men? Are they even alive? Have they been jailed? No one really knows. They have not been seen in public for 2 years. And the same could be the fate of the current defense minister. His name is Dong Jun. Reports say he too is under investigation, again over corruption charges. The reports came out last month, although China has aggressively denied them.
The Financial Times reported on the possibility of Chinese Defense Minister Dong Jun being investigated for corruption. What is the spokesperson's response to this?
It's just shadow chasing.
They're chasing shadows. That's what Beijing says about the reports on Dong. But you see, his status is not clear. He disappeared and made an appearance 2 weeks ago, but he did not address the allegations against him. As Beijing tries to manage the bad press, President Xi Jinping's military crackdown is very much on. Which begs the question, just how corrupt are the Chinese forces? Earlier this year, Xi Jinping made a rare admission. He said that China's military faces, and I'm quoting, the military faces deep-seated problems. Problems that he has failed to resolve despite years of purge and investigation. Clearly, the PLA is a compromise force. Xi Jinping wanted them to be war-ready by 2027. But at this rate, he will be at war with them. And by the time he's done, there may be no generals left to lead his forces. If this crackdown continues, military readiness would be the least of China's concerns. Will Imran Khan be freed from jail? It seemed impossible a few months ago, but now there is serious chatter. Western countries are putting pressure on Islamabad. They want Imran Khan out of jail, and leading the charge is the United States of America. Not Joe Biden, though. It's his successor, Donald Trump. Trump has named an envoy for so-called special missions. This mainly covers hotspot areas, countries like Iran, Venezuela, North Korea. His name is Richard Grenell. He served in the first Trump presidency as well. His name was also doing the rounds for Secretary of State. So we're talking about a key advisor here. And look at what he posted recently. Free Imran Khan. That's what he wrote. It's not some one-off post either. Grenell has consistently called for Imran Khan's release. He's compared his situation to that of Donald Trump, and he says that both men are facing political persecution.
He is currently in prison on a lot of the same allegations, just like President Trump, where the ruling party put him in prison and created some corruption allegations and false allegations.
Imran Khan was Prime Minister from 2018 to 2022. Donald Trump was President from 2017 to 2021. So their terms overlapped. But how is their relationship? A bit hot and cold. Trump hosted Imran Khan at the White House in 2019. He called him a dear friend and great leader. But the same Trump also cut off military aid to Pakistan. He accused Islamabad of betraying the US, of playing a double game on terrorism. So what explains the sudden love for Imran Khan? One reason could be the diaspora. There are more than 600,000 Pakistani Americans. Most of them supported Donald Trump, and that includes the PAC, the Pakistani American Public Affairs Committee. It's the most powerful Pakistani group in the United States, and look at what they said before the elections. I'm quoting. We believe Trump is the candidate who will secure the release of all wrongfully imprisoned political prisoners in Pakistan. The PAC is firmly pro-Trump and pro-Imran Khan. They also have close ties to Richard Grenell. He has praised this group a number of times in the past. He's also toured their mosque on Tuesday. So there is a domestic angle in this case. But is that all? We ask because it's not just the Trump camp. Even Joe Biden is turning the screw. This week, Washington slammed Pakistan's military tribunals. They also sanctioned Pakistan's missile program. Same in Europe and Britain. London also condemned the military trials in Pakistan, and the European Union went a step ahead. They have threatened to cut off a preferential trade deal with Islamabad. So what explains this pivot? And could it lead to Imran Khan's release from jail? Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan appears to be softening his position. He has formed a special committee for talks, a committee to explore a deal with Imran Khan's party. The party is called the PTI, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. Today, Imran Khan's family and lawyers met him in jail. Afterwards, his sister revealed his demands. Listen to this.
आप 3 सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जजेस की सीनियर मोस्ट जजेस की आप एक कमीशन बनाएंगे. उन सीनियर मोस्ट जजेस के नीचे वो तहकीकात करेंगे 9 मई की और 26 नवंबर की. दूसरा मुतालबा ये है कि जो नाजायज कैद में लोग हैं इनको रिहा किया जाए.
So two demands, a judicial commission to probe last year's violence and the release of all political prisoners in Pakistan. Basically his jail party workers. Now Imran Khan has more than 150 cases against him. He's been in jail since May 2023. So if you abruptly release him, you lose face. You're basically accepting that he won. A more acceptable compromise would be a house arrest or reduced sentence. But there's a problem with that. Imran Khan says no house arrest. He wants to stay in jail and fight out the case. So things are looking up for Imran Khan at this point. It's too early to say whether he will be freed or not. But one thing's for sure. The West has discovered him again. He had become a forgotten story over the last year, but suddenly he's back on the radar. How did that happen? The change of guard certainly helped. Let's rewind to 2022 when Imran Khan was ousted. He blamed the West. He said the United States and Britain plotted his downfall. And who was in power then? Joe Biden and the Democrats were in power in the US and the Conservatives in the UK. Both those players have been voted out this year. And the new regimes are sympathetic to Imran Khan. In October, around 20 British MPs urged London to intervene. They asked the UK Foreign Secretary to push for Imran Khan's release. And one of those MPs was Jeremy Corbyn, the former leader of the Labour Party. Frankly, it's hard to pinpoint one reason for this pivot. It's a combination of Western politics and changing strategic realities. For instance, Shehbaz Sharif has pushed Pakistan closer to Western rivals. He's buying Russian gas. He wants to join the BRICS. And he's talking about a unified Islamic currency with Iran. Chances are the West does not like any of that. So Sharif and the generals have two options here: concede to Imran Khan or deal with Western pressure. His ministers are peddling desperate stories now. The Defence Minister of Pakistan has called Imran Khan an Israeli asset. He says the campaign for his release is also being spearheaded by Israel. Just classic Pakistani anti-Semitism. But either way, one thing is clear: there could be a churn looming in Pakistani politics. It goes without saying that India must be ready for it. Our next story is about China and the Philippines. A war of words is brewing between the two countries. Beijing is furious with Manila. China has been issuing warnings, giving lectures and turning its state media machinery against the Philippines. Why? Apparently because the Philippines has the audacity to try and protect itself. On Monday, the Philippine Army gave a press briefing. Their commanding general was delivering the year-end address. He spoke about the Army's future plans, including possibly buying missile systems from the United States. That lit the spark. And China had a meltdown because the Philippines said it was considering the Typhoon. The Typhoon is a missile launcher. It is a mid-range system capable of firing two types of missiles, the SM-6 and the Tomahawk. The SM-6 has a range of about 500 kilometers, which is roughly 270 nautical miles. Tomahawks have a much longer range, approximately 1600 kilometers or 860 nautical miles. And the nautical ranges are important to note. They are the reason that Beijing is furious. Let's give you some context first. China is an expansionist state. It makes bogus claims on foreign territory. Then it sends its military to occupy the disputed regions. We've seen this in India, in Bhutan, in Vietnam, and of course in the Philippines. The Philippines has it rough. It lies in the South China Sea region. Beijing illegally claims the entire sea. This includes parts that legally belong to Manila, like small islands and atolls that lie in the West Philippine Sea, and other parts of the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone, EEZ. An exclusive economic zone is a country's naval territory. It extends 200 nautical miles beyond a country's shores. Now, this is Manila's EEZ. As the name suggests, it should be exclusive. But Beijing does not care about international rules and laws. It regularly sends ships to Filipino waters to exploit their resources and to harass their maritime personnel. Remember, this is within the Philippines' EEZ, within the 200 nautical miles of Filipino shores. So now let's come back to the Typhoon system. As I said earlier, it fires the SM-6 missile, which has a range of about 270 nautical miles, which basically means that the Typhoon can help secure the entire Philippine EEZ. It gives Manila a last-ditch option in case Beijing's harassment escalates into all-out conflict. That is why the Philippines is keen on the Typhoon system, and that is why China is livid.
我们再次奉劝菲方
We once again advise the Philippine side that the only correct choice for safeguarding its security is to adhere to strategic autonomy, good neighborliness, and peaceful development. We are telling the Philippine side that China will never stand by and watch its own security interests being jeopardized or threatened, and that if the Philippine side is bent on having its own way, it will surely lift a rock and smash its own foot.
不要再上演颠倒是非、倒打一耙的拙劣戏码。
China has been issuing these warnings for the past few days, ever since the Philippine Army announced its intention to buy the Typhoon. But I should mention, it's not a done deal. Defense procurement takes time. All viable options have to be considered. The Philippines also has a rule. It takes at least 2 years to finalize any defense deal. Manila has not budgeted the Typhoon for 2025 either. So if this deal takes place, it will be far into the future. That being said, there is already one Typhoon system in the Philippines. The US deployed one of their own in the month of April for joint drills with the Philippines. Those drills wrapped up a while ago, but the Typhoon is still there. This could be an American sales tactic, getting the Philippine forces used to the Typhoon so that there won't be any training time needed if they buy one. And this has further incensed China.
The Philippine side once said publicly that the Typhoon system would only be used for a routine exercise, promising to withdraw it upon the completion of the exercise in September this year. But then it changed its statement to say that it hoped to deploy the Typhoon system permanently, and it was even prepared to purchase the system. This is a typical case of breaking one's promise and reneging on it. At present, who are the ones who keep provoking the South China Sea? And who are the ones who are cooperating with the extraterritorial forces in showing off their force? And who is violating the law under the banner of international law? The countries of the region can see this clearly.
She accused Manila of making provocations in the disputed seas. She said they were the ones violating maritime law and fueling regional tensions. It must take tremendous flexibility to pull off mental gymnastics like that. Manila is standing its ground, though, saying its defense and security are not subject to any foreign veto. In fact, let me quote from their statement. This is what the Philippines said. If the Chinese Communist Party is truly intent on reducing tensions and instability in the region, they should cease their saber rattling, stop their provocative actions, halt their interference in other countries' internal affairs, withdraw their illegal presence from the Philippines' EEZ, and adhere to international law. There isn't much chance of that happening, so Manila should do what's in their best interest. If they don't, Beijing is likely to take advantage of any openings they find. On December 8th, Bashar al-Assad fled from Syria. The regime fell. It's been 18 days since then. Syria now has new leaders. They have formed the government. There is talk of reform. The world is engaging with them. It looks like a new beginning for the country. Yet the past still looms large. Syria may be free, but still very fragmented. And that is giving rise to unrest. In the last 3 days, there have been multiple clashes in Syria. People have been killed, curfews have been imposed, and the new government is struggling to keep things under control. The first incident was in Tartus. It's a Mediterranean port city. Syria's security forces there wanted to arrest a former officer, one who was part of the Assad regime. But once they reached there, they were ambushed. Assad loyalists attacked them. The officer's brother intercepted the forces. Armed men attacked them. Their patrol vehicles were targeted. 14 policemen were killed. 10 others were injured. Soon, massive protests broke out in the city. The second incident was in Homs, another city in western Syria. Protests broke out here too, but this was over a viral social media video. It showed an attack on an Alawite shrine. The residents did not take it well. They descended on the streets to protest. There were some gunshots too. The Interior Ministry says the video is old. It's from late November when the rebel offensive was underway. They also don't know who attacked the shrine. They say it was by unknown groups. But that has not quelled the protests. And beyond Tartus and Homs, demonstrations also broke out in other parts of Syria, like the port city of Latakia and Assad's hometown of Kardaha. Now, all of these incidents have something in common. It is the Alawite community. They are a sect of Shia Islam, but they have their own distinct beliefs and practices. And this sets them apart from Shia and Sunni Muslims. The Alawites are one of the biggest minorities in Syria, making up for about 10% of the population. Historically, the Alawites were marginalized. They faced constant oppression. But that changed with Hafiz al-Assad, the father of Bashar al-Assad. The Assad family is Alawite, and they ruled Syria for 5 decades, which gave the community some serious clout. But now that the Assad regime has fallen, the Alawites face an uncertain future. Many of them fear revenge.
There is no need for the events that happened in Tartus, and HTS must hit those who went out in protests with an iron fist because we were under the control of a bad regime. While they're going out and doing all this chaos, there will be no civil war. All those were remnants of the previous regime.
Some of these fears are justified. Extremist rebel groups have threatened the Alawites before. There are videos of them saying that we will slaughter the Alawites. And all of this has alarmed the community. They fear that they will pay the price for Assad's crimes. But Syria's new rulers have been quite clear in their messaging. The HTS has reached out to Alawite leaders. They have tried to engage with the community. They have published multiple statements, all of them saying that minorities will be respected and that the real enemies are not the Alawites, but the people linked to the Assad regime.
There are two sects, the Alawite and the Assadi. The Assadi sect, who are trying to destabilize the security of our country, they will be burnt. Syria is ours. Syria is for everybody. It is not for the Assad family, and there is no fear in the new government.
We will have to see if the HTS sticks to its words. In the meantime, the Alawites are caught in a limbo. The mistrust between communities is deep-seated. They fear retaliation, and it's this fear that is feeding the unrest. The new government in Damascus is struggling to address it. And that perhaps is the biggest challenge for Syria's new leaders, to build a future without repeating the mistakes of the past. Can Syria turn its fragile peace into lasting progress? Or will old wounds reopen to define?
And tragic news coming in. What we are learning from top Congress leaders, including Robert Vadra as well as Salman Khurshid, is that former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh is no more. He passed away at the age of 92. He breathed his last at AIIMS in the national capital. Now what we are learning is that senior Congress leaders are rushing back to the national capital. Remember, they had their centenary celebrations in Belgavi, and top Congress leaders are rushing back to the national capitals. As per Salman Khurshid as well as Robert Vadra, former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, the man who helmed the two UPA regimes, is no more. He was admitted in the ICU in AIIMS after complaining of breathlessness. And now, as per Salman Khurshid as well as Robert Vadra, he has breathed his last and is no more at the age of 92. What we are also learning is that Union Health Minister, JP Nadda, is currently at AIIMS. Also, Wayanad MP Priyanka Gandhi Vadra is also at AIIMS. And also what we are learning is that Sonia Gandhi as well as Rahul Gandhi are rushing to AIIMS in the wake of this tragic news that's coming in from the national capital. Well, former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh is no more. I'm joined by my colleague Pallavi Ghosh on the broadcast. So Pallavi, sad news coming in. Salman Khurshid and Robert Vadra both have put out the information that Manmohan Singh has breathed his last at AIIMS in the national capital, and a tall figure of the UPA era of Indian politics now no more.
And the writer over here is that we are still waiting for the official word to come in, both from the party as well as from AIIMS. What we are being told is AIIMS is likely to issue a medical bulletin anytime now. We'll have to wait to see what are the developments in that. But yes, certainly the indications don't sound very good. The Congress has almost cancelled the rally, which was to be held in Belgavi tomorrow as a part of the CWC meeting. Rahul Gandhi, who was very much there, is also rushing back. That has been confirmed by his office. But apart from that, Sonia Gandhi, Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, Robert Vadra, all the Delhi Congress leaders who are here are all rushing to AIIMS. The family is also, of course, there. He was admitted earlier today. What we were told by his office was acute breathlessness in a very serious condition. All doctors looking upon him, and he was admitted to ICU. At 92, he has been very frail. He has not been keeping very good health. He had actually stepped away from public political life in 2024 when his term had ended in Rajya Sabha. He walked away into sunset. I remember the last pictures we saw of him was in 2022 inside Rajya Sabha itself when he had come to cast his vote for a presidential elections. You're absolutely right. While we await that official word to come in, it's been a long legacy that he has left behind. And if I can use the words which he said to us once at a press conference, that history is going to remember me kindly. There has been a lot of political controversies which has dogged his 10 years in power, especially in the last 2 to 3 years of UPA 2. But his contribution to the economy, his idea of liberalization, opening up the Indian economy. That is his biggest contribution as far as India's economic story is concerned. And in fact, the present Prime Minister would always admit that whatever rancor we may have displayed during the 2014 Lok Sabha elections, the fact is that his contribution to India's growth story has never been forgotten. Each time the Prime Minister went to take oath of office, he would always take a tour to Dr. Manmohan Singh's official residence on Motilal Nehru Marg and greet him and take his blessings. That's the kind of bonhomie we saw between the two of them. But talking about Dr. Manmohan Singh, the economist, but also the reluctant politician, his political term also, Ayushman, will be remembered for a lot of achievements. I mean, the Indo-US nuclear deal, he was so sure that it's going to solve India's energy problems that he was ready to stake his government. We know, for example, how left walked out and then the Samajwadi Party bailed him out, and the rest is history. He also was known for Aadhaar and many of the other progressive legislation. From bringing the economy on track from fiscal deficit into an export-import surplus, that's also been one of his contributions.
Absolutely. And Dr. Manmohan Singh also heralded that liberalization drive, Pallavi, as you were highlighting that liberalization drive. He helmed it at a time where Narasimha Rao's government was in minority. There was a lot of political turbulence surrounding it, but someone who put his brain onto paper and created the growth story that India is now flourishing because of.
Yes, in fact, even as we speak, Ayushman, the Congress has says so now. In fact, the Congress has given us a copy of the a bulletin which has come in from the AIMS. It says that we informed the demise of former Prime Minister of India, aged 92. He was being treated for age-related medical condition and sudden loss of consciousness at home. He was brought in and he could not be revived and was declared dead at 9:51 p.m. This is as official as it can get. This is the kind of bulletin which has now been released to us on behalf of AIMS by the Congress Party. So it's now official now. And yes, to answer your question, I mean, his legacy is something which is very strong for 10 years that he was in power as a Prime Minister. But before that, 1991, it was when he actually took over as the Finance Minister. Before that, he was Economic Advisor, he's the RBI Governor. 1991 to 1996 was his term as a Finance Minister. And he had, as I talked about, he had taken charge at a time when the fiscal deficits were huge. India also had to sell his gold reserves. To bring it back on track has not been an easy story.
And rushing back to Delhi, most of us. So I think it will be cancelled. I mean, it's not for me to announce. The government of Karnataka will announce. But for me, I have to get back now and see.
You worked in his cabinet. How do you remember him, sir?
I remember him as a wonderful man, a good leader, a compassionate individual, a great visionary. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Hey!
And I'm also joined by Pankaj Pachauri, former advisor to Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. Thank you, Mr. Pachauri, for joining us on CNN News 18. A huge loss to the nation. Dr. Manmohan Singh, the towering figure of India's liberalization drive, and also a man who helmed India's growth story in the first UPA regime, a two-time Prime Minister, no more, but his legacy everlasting.
Yes, it's a very sad day for India, and it's a very sad day for all the people who love the idea of India. And with my connection with him for over 2.5 years, I've had the honor and privilege to work with a man who could change the course or the way for our country, not even in terms of its economy, but the way a country should be run in inclusiveness, with respect to all the people who live in this country. It's a very sad day today, and it's very difficult to express my any opinion about him. He was a towering figure. I still remember working with him, and the world leaders who used to call him for advice, which is not in public domain, but on many issues, people like Barack Obama, Angela Merkel, and other leaders used to call him for advice, and he was one of the figures who used to tell them how to go about the works which change courses of the nation. I still remember, about when European Union had problems. Ms. Merkel will call him regularly for his counsel. And as far as our country is concerned, I think he conducted himself with utmost decency and understatement. And he always said that I'm a small man who is sitting in a big chair. But some chairs, they become big when a small man sits in them. And some men who are small, they can't fill that chair. He leaves a legacy to our country, which we should cherish and we should nurture. And we should continue that legacy in a country where we have had a free market and a free thought process. He was a reformer when it came to our economy, and he was also a nurturer when it came to our society. His contribution in implementing the Manrega, right to food, and all the rights-based legislations which were passed and enforced during his time are his legacy. And a country like India, which is really vast and which is really complex, he was able to take along as many people with him at all times to provide a better future to the country.
Right, and Mr. Pachauri, also Dr. Manmohan Singh was someone who was accepted and respected across party lines. He was a model statesman in the current political context, given the fissures when it comes to political decorum, if you talk about the party at the center and the parties in the opposition. Now, across the party lines, he was respected and well regarded. At the same time, despite the political turmoil, he always maintained the decorum of being the Prime Minister of this country.
That's absolutely correct. He rose above any party divisions at that time, and I still remember a lot of people from the Bharatiya Janata Party also used to call them for conversations, for their advice, for their counsel. And I still remember when Telangana was being bifurcated from Andhra Pradesh, he called all the three major leaders of the Bharatiya Janata Party, Mr. Advani, Mr. Jaitley, Sushma Swaraj. All these people were called to his home, and one thing he told them very clearly: this is something which is going to be forever, and I do not want any rupture in our thought process that we are dividing a state, and I want everyone on board. And all three of them came out, very satisfied with what he had to say. So this was a very sort of divisive issue at that time, and he did that. On other occasions, I remember him sending his wishes. Yesterday was 25th of December, and it was the birthday of Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. He always wrote a letter to him or tried to call him on that day when he could take calls to wish him on his birthday. So he had this ability to take with him differing sort of opinions, and he told me once, I talked to him about it, that it's very, those days towards the end of his second term, that people are becoming very critical and very even abusive on social media and stuff. And he said that I have a experience working at the South Commission to talk to people and take them along in a very differing sort of opinion and ideologies all over the world. And that's what I've learned there. And that he put to the best use while he was head of a coalition government, and a coalition government which was pretty, at some times, divisive itself. And there were problems within the coalition, but he could take everyone along. First, in the first term, he had to deal with a lot of opposition from within, from the left parties, and they were supporting him. And that turned out to be the best time for India's economy. So he had this ability to take on board different kind of ideologies, different kind of views with the decency. And he used to say that India is such a big country that one ideology or one view cannot bring it together and take it forward.
And this is Pallavi here, and I remember those days when we used to come to your office and you would tell us about Dr. Manmohan Singh. You know, many would find him a kind of a reluctant politician, but somehow over years managed to hold on to its own. You saw him very closely. How did you see him do the transition from being a hardcore economist to a politician who withstood his ground when he wanted to?
That was put to test during the nuclear deal, and he was quite sure that the nuclear deal between America and India was a good thing for India, more good for India than for America, because he said there are a lot of restrictions which have been put on the Indian economy because America has put you on those lists, and we cannot get the required technology and support which we need at this point in our economy to go forward. And he put his foot down on that. And I remember those days when I was a journalist, talking to people like Sitaram Yechury and Prakash Karat, that why are they pulling their support from the government on this? And when I talked to him about those days once, he said that they had their own compulsions, but I would be proved right that this deal with America is going to usher a path for India's economic benefit. And if India goes forward economically and financially, it's going to be good for Indian people. And he put his foot down on that, and he said, if they are pulling out their support, it's fine.
Yes,
so
I remember he had said that.
Very consummate politician. See, everyone tries to tar him like this is just an economist or a bureaucrat.
Okay,
no.
Mr. Pachauri, I'm just going to come back to you. I have to get in a word from Mr. Shashi Tharoor. Mr. Tharoor, this is Pallavi over here. First of all, our condolences to you. Mr. Tharoor, you worked as a part of his cabinet. And I remember many would call him, his critics certainly called him, a very weak Prime Minister. But during the cabinet meetings, what was the glimpse you got of him and your first response to this tragic story news coming in?
First of all, I owe a great deal to Dr. Manmohan Singh. He had a very major role in bringing me to politics along with Sonia Gandhi ji. And I have to say that he was always, to me, a visionary statesman, somebody with an extraordinary mind who saw with great urgent concern about the problems of India, of young people. He was somebody who really wanted to build an India that would outlast him and that would be so much better than what he had taken over. His humanity, his compassion, his wisdom, all of these were the qualities that I remember the most. Yes, he was a fine economist. Yes, he was an experienced bureaucrat, all of those things, but those are not the things that I remember. I think of him principally in terms of his humanity. A very, very good human being is gone, and it's a great loss for all of us.
People would often call him, people as in the critics would call him a weak man, as a weak Prime Minister who could not stand up to the trials which a job required. Would you agree with that? Would you see him, kind of stand firm whenever you would interact with him?
First of all, this is not really a moment to start looking at anybody's weaknesses or whatever the debatable things may be. I think this is the time to mourn the loss of a fine human being. The time for more dispassionate analysis can always come later. For me, what I see particularly in his performance was a man of tremendous integrity and strength of character. I know that he didn't flinch on a number of matters where a weaker person might have, and one good example was there was a disagreement, I know, between him and the party president on the issue of how India would vote at the IAEA on Iran. And he took a line which was not the party's line, but he prevailed because he was the prime minister and the party president respected his prerogative to take a call. It's not that he just caved in on every issue as has been falsely accused. Let me just say that right now what I want to think about is all the good he's done for the country. From the day he was the governor of the Reserve Bank, the day he was finance minister, and subsequently as prime minister for 10 years, he really set the nation on the path to so much that was good for us, so much of progress, advancement. He had this extraordinary, he was the first prime minister to pull 10 million people out of poverty every year. He was the first one to first open bank accounts for poor people. He was the first one to actually start the process of direct benefit transfers. A lot of things we now celebrate in the subsequent government had begun under him and were the products of his vision. So let's not knock a great and good prime minister for cheap point scoring right now, Pallavi. I'm sorry, I'm not going to play that
Mr.
game.
Tharoor, one last word before I let you go. What is the legacy that he leaves behind?
Oh, well, first of all, the economic transformation of India. The liberalization is a Manmohan Singh triumph in all sorts of ways, both what was done and how it was done. Secondly, the fact that we sustained that even during the global financial crisis of 2008-2009. Thirdly, the fact that he was a humane prime minister who managed a complicated coalition government, which is not an easy job. Somebody who is sort of more strong-willed might easily have collapsed sooner. The government might have collapsed sooner because of trying to impose his view on various dueling parties and leaders. He was a conciliator. He could take people along. So he gave India 10 years of stability and economic growth and pulled poor people out of poverty. I think that's a great legacy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shashi Tharoor, and our condolences to you for speaking to us. I'm also being joined by Mr. Dinesh Trivedi. Mr. Trivedi, you know, one thing which Dr. Manmohan Singh always evoked was a kind of warmth from people, politicians, cutting across party lines. You were not a part of the Congress, you were a part of the Trinamool Congress at that point of time, and of course now with the BJP. Your first thoughts about Dr. Manmohan Singh?
I think Dr. Manmohan Singh was never partisan. He always rose above party, and he was always ready to listen to any kind of suggestion. And even in the cabinet meetings, I can tell you, he made us feel as if he was our colleague, and never thrown his weight around. And he had all the patience to listen. I remember the episode when we had this Tista agreement draft, and we had a lot of exchange of heated argument with Dr. Pranab Mukherjee, and the PM was there. But he gave the leeway because he knew that this is not personal. And this is whatever is good for the country, we would speak. And we were absolutely free to express our things for the ministry we were representing. I think the history will always remember him as a prime minister who really contributed a lot. And to have two consecutive terms with allies, and in the second term, allies also got changed. Instead of CPM, TMC got him on board. So I think he made us feel like he was a great friend of all. And I don't think so he was a weak prime minister as it appears, but he was a very practical person. And we will definitely, the world will miss him, not only India.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Dinesh Trivedi. Yes, we can understand, because I remember one of his last words was that history is going to remember me kindly. I'm going to go across to Mumtaz Patel, a politician from Gujarat and also the late Ahmed Patel's daughter. Thank you very much for speaking to CNN News 18, Mumtaz. Mumtaz, this is Pallavi over here. You must have obviously met him with or without your father. But what was your impressions about Dr. Manmohan Singh?
You know, I remember him as a very soft-spoken person. I mean, that's my earliest memory. I mean, even just now when I heard the news, deeply saddened that, you know, we lost a great visionary leader, but such a simple, soft-spoken person and very practical in his approach. Of course, I had the pleasure of meeting him several times. He even attended my wedding. That was before he was Prime Minister, and he was my father's colleague. And of course, then the Prime Minister of India. A towering statement, that's what I can say. And yes, I agree with what he said. History is going to remember him kindly.
You know, he was new to politics in the sense that largely an economist. And he also went through his tough times in his political career. Were there occasions or anecdotes which are conveyed to you by your father explaining how Dr. Manmohan Singh was able to take on and fight against all odds?
Yeah, that whole perception that was created of him being a weak prime minister, even that film that we saw, The Accidental Prime Minister, yes, he was new to politics for sure, but definitely not weak. When he had to take a stand, he took a stand, whatever was in the best interest of the country as well as the party. My father, of course, was there in the middle of it all between the Congress party and the PMO. And I clearly remember, because I've been privy to a lot of conversations and seen a lot happening in that house. And definitely not weak. He had a vision. He was practical, like I said, and he was dedicated to India's progress.
Okay. And, not many were lucky enough to be understanding 1991 to 1996, his economic era as an economist. But do you have any memories of, the economic policies of Dr. Manmohan Singh? As you yourself are now branched out into politics, what are the lessons you would want to learn from the former Prime Minister?
I was very young at that, to be honest. So that was really at that. I was very young. I was in school, but the later years, the decade that he was the Prime Minister, I of course have memories of the fact that, in 2008, when the entire world was facing an economic crisis and in depression, India stood strong. And that was mostly because of Dr. Manmohan Singh Ji's economic policies and vision. So, yes, we've heard great stories about him. We've also seen how he worked. India was flourishing in those 10 decades, irrespective of whatever the perception the opposition created, as well as, like he said, the history will be kinder to me than media. Media was also not on his side, right?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mumtaz, for speaking to us. I'm also now being joined by the former Home Minister, Mr. Sushil Kumar Shinde, and also a very, very veteran politician. Thank you very much for speaking to CNN News 18, your first memories and the legacy of Dr. Manmohan Singh. Okay, Mr. Mishinde, we're just going to go back to him. I'm so sorry, but there are many people who want to pay their rich tributes. And when everyone was talking about him, everyone spoke about the fact that it's very wrong to label him as a weak Prime Minister or a weak man. Since you were the closest in close coordination, were there moments when he felt that this was a very incorrect perception about him? And, did you get that sense that, if he thought that something was important and right for the country, he would do it no matter what?
This whole perception was basically made by the media and his opponents and rivals at that time. When it comes to courage, I still remember during his last press conference, 3rd of January, I remember that very distinctly, in 2014. We had prepared a lot of questions and stuff. This may be asked, that may be asked, and all that. And there was a whole thing, a file I took to him that this is we are expecting, the media is going to ask you. He never once looked at that. He said, I have done what I had to do. I've done it with absolute honesty, and that's the kind of courage he showed. So I said, let's go through the questions. He said, no. I know everything, and he knew everything. And you won't believe it, that was the courage he showed as a Prime Minister, who is not afraid to talk to the media one-on-one about 10 long years of his work, and he knew everything. And he said it later on that I was not the Prime Minister, scared to face the media. And this whole, thing which has been said that he was not the right, he didn't have courage and he was a weak Prime Minister and all that. In that press conference only, he said it very clearly that he talked about this very openly to everyone, and you won't believe it that we were there for an hour. We had taken an hour for that press conference. It went over an hour. There were like 69 questions asked to him, and he answered every question. Every question was answered by him because he said he had the courage of his work behind him. He had the courage of